Let's do más rápido. We don't have as much time here. Pick up the pace on the tune. Strum faster. Strum faster. The crowd screams. You need to strum faster. Okay. I will try. All right. So now we're going to say, what if we go back 14? So what's the local distance? 14 minus 12 would give us a -2. So normally that would be a -2. And if I went back 2, I would be going 12 minus 2, which would be forward 10, which is a minor 7. So I could call it then a -2 minor 7, which means another octave would be -2 and another 12, which would be a -14 minor 7. So the minor 7 is the clockwise distance, but I'm still using it because I can't do the negative distance, but I can indicate that it's a negative of 14 steps. So I can do that from a minor this time. Let's do it from like the Phrygian, because it's a minor distance that will land us on a continent. So let's say the local distance would be 2 away. So if I back 2, that would be to the Dorian. That's what I would call a 3-2 modal range. That would be a PD modal range, or a 3-2 modal range, although I'm going in the counterclockwise direction. But we want to go -14. So -14, there's 5 notes between the strings. So 5, 10, and then a 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 could bring me to here. So it's still going to be, that's still a PD or 3-2 modal range, but it's and -12 for a distance in the counterclockwise or negative direction. I would like to call that a -14 note away from the Phrygian node, negative first modal half step. That negative is flowing through all the way through the term, which you would think would be the -2nd scale degree, but we don't have -2nd scale degrees because we only have clockwise scale degrees, not counterclockwise scale degrees. So it is what it is. So, but you could drop either one of those. I could say it's a -14 notes from the Phrygian, and that's all I need because it tells me where I'm at and the distance. Or I could say it's a Phrygian -8th modal half step, which you would think would be the -9th scale degree if we had those, which would compound the scale degree. That's all you would need. And if I took 8 minus 7, that would give us the -1st or local scale degree distance. By the way, obviously, if I have this negative first, if I want to see the inverse direction or the clockwise direction, you can take 7 minus 1, and that would be 6 going in the clockwise direction, right? You would say that's going to be okay. If I was going forward, where am I going? It would be 6 here. So it would be 10 note away from the Phrygian node, 6th modal half step, which would be the 7th scale degree in the clockwise direction. So you can see these terms, of course, make sense because if I go around the block clockwise or counterclockwise, you can figure each way around the block just using simple, math, common sense. You go around the block one way, around the other. If I tried to count this up, 8 modal half steps, count it backwards, I'm going to say that would be 1, 2. This is still 2 over here. 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's still 5 over here. 6, 7, 8. 8 back, which would be 9 modal half steps back, or 9 scale degrees if I made that the -1. But they don't normally do that because it's a mess to go backwards with the scale degrees, which I hope I'm trying to emphasize that point. Going backwards with the scale degrees doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? You would think that it should work because it's wrong. It's wrong. That's why. No, it's not wrong. It's historic. Okay. Look. I'm trying not to lose my temper here, but it's wrong. Okay. I can't help. Anyways. Let's do the next one. Let's say we go back 15. 15 minus the local distance of 12 would be 5 minus 2, which would be a -3. So -3 would be, the forward distance would be 12 minus 3, which would be 9. So you would think that would be a 9 note away major 6 clockwise, which would be a 3 note away, major 6. If you're going in the negative direction, I'm just going to keep the major 6, which means that if you go another octave, it would be negative 15, major 6. You can see that's kind of a mess to do. But if I take the local distance, 15 minus 12, it was 5 minus 2 is 3. So let's do that from like the Ionian. And we go back 3, 1, 2, 3. That would be an IA modal range or 1/6 modal range, although it's going in the counterclockwise direction. But we want to be going back 15. So there's 5 notes between each. So 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 would bring me here. So that's still an IA modal range or a 1/6 modal range, but it's an IA and a negative 12, giving me direction in the negative direction as well as an octave up. I'd like to call it a 15 note away from the Ionian node, second modal half step, which you would think would be the 3rd scale degree, that second being the local distance, right? 1, 2 back, so to give us the flavor. But you could call it either a negative 15 note away from the Ionian node or an Ionian negative 9th modal half step, which is a negative compound interval in that direction. Now notice if I say something, let's pick this one up, is a negative 2 going backwards around the block counterclockwise, I could say, well, that means that 7 minus 2 would be 4 going forward. So that would be a 4 going forward. Hold on, that's not right, is it? 7 minus 2 is 5. 5, that makes sense. All right, so that would be a 9 note away from the Ionian node major 6, which would be major 5th modal half step, which would be a major 6th scale degree, would be the idea. All right, let's try to count back 9 from this note. So if I count back 9 modal half steps, it would be 1, 2, 3. This is 3 again. 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 6 again. 7, 8, 9. With 9 steps back, so we can count that out. All right, let's do the next one. Más rápido. I wish this eraser was better. I wish it was better. It drives me crazy that I can't just erase everything as neatly as I ought to be able to. But that's okay. Let's move up to the next one. We're going to say now we're going 16 back. 16 back. So what's the local distance? 16 minus 12 is 6 minus 2, 6, 5, 4. So it would be a negative 4 backwards. If I go negative 4 backwards, that would be 12 minus 4, which would be an 8 forward or clockwise, which is normally a minor 6. So I'd have to say, well, the negative is going to be a negative 4 note away minor 6, and plus another 12 would be negative 16 minor 6. But I'd rather do it from, if I look at this in a local distance, we're going to say, let's go from the Phrygian. And we'll say that we're going to go then back 16 minus 12, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, back 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 to the Ionian. So that would be a PI modal range, which would be, you can also say it's a 3-1 modal range in the counterclockwise direction. But I want to go back 16. So there's 5 notes between the strings, 5, 10, 15, 16. This is still a PY modal range or a 3-1 modal range, but it's and negative 12 going in the negative direction or counterclockwise, and an octave, which I would like to call a negative 16 note away from the Phrygian node, negative 2nd modal half step, which would be the negative 3rd scale degree if there were such a thing as negative 3rd scale degrees or negative scale degrees, but we don't. We only have clockwise scale degrees, not counterclockwise scale degrees. But if you use this, you could also call it a negative 16 from the Phrygian node and leave it at that. Or you can call it a Phrygian negative 9th modal half step and leave it at that. Right, so you can use either method of measurement, whichever you think would be best to suit your purpose, because we're measuring it properly, and both measurements make sense. Something that cannot be said about the scale degrees. Now, if I'm going negative 2 modal half steps in counterclockwise, 7 minus 2 would be 5 clockwise. So we can go 5 up clockwise, which would be here. So that would be an 8 note away from the Phrygian node, 5th modal half step, which would be the 6th scale degree. So if I try to count back then from this Phrygian back 9, I could go, okay, this is 9 modal half steps. 1, 2, and then 3. There's 3 repeats. 4, 5, 6 repeats. 6, 7, 8 repeats, and 9. So we can count it backwards and forwards. I got it. I can do it backwards and forwards. I know it so well. I can do it backwards and forwards. And so that's good. I actually work better going backwards because I'm weird like that, but that's okay. And let's see. No, I don't go better going backwards. I don't know. That's not true, but whatever. Next one, outra vez. Okay, so now we're gonna go back 17. 17 back. So what's the local distance? 17 minus 12 is like 7 minus 2, 7, 6, 5. Negative 5. If I was going forward clockwise, it would be 12 minus 5 in the local distance, which would be 7, and that's going to be a perfect fifth. So I would call this a negative 5 perfect fifth for the local distance, which if I add another 12, which would be a negative 17, and then the clockwise